everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Sarita Nair. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the city. Thank you all for being here today. We're here to talk about 311. And the first time that I ever called 311, my garbage can got a giant dent in it, and I was talking to my neighbor about how it happened, and he said, you just call 311 and they'll bring you out a new cart. And I had no idea what 311 is, so I called up and they said, yes, ma'am, just put your card out this morning and you'll have a new bin by the evening. And I kind of didn't believe it, but then it happened. And it was kind of amazing. And that's how I learned what an incredibly comprehensive system 311 is, and how it is really, when you step back from it for a minute, truly amazing that you can call this one number and get access to all the services and information that the city has to offer. But of course, like all things, as the city's grown and the ways that we communicate with each other have grown and expanded, 311 has faced its fair share of challenges. I know some of the first ones that I heard about were people saying, I called in a pothole and it's showing that it's fixed on 311, but I'm looking outside my door and it's not fixed. And, we kind of joke, like, who are you going to believe, 311 or your lying eyes? But it turned out that, that there's good reasons behind all these things. Then people started tweeting at me about the streetlights that were out on their corner. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, streetlights, I've never paid that much attention to them. But then I started getting, after we responded to a couple of them, I started getting more and more tweets and said, wow, we need to make sure that the way that 311 is responding to these questions are more accurate. And that's really one of the projects that we embarked on early in 2018, and we've been working on ever since. So what we're here to talk about today are some of the facts and figures around 311, and Carrie Prothero, who's the Citizen Contact Center Manager, will talk about that. Some of the data around what people call us for and why, some of the good fixes we've been able to make, and then also some of the challenges that we continue to face and how we continue to work on those things. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carrie.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak with you about the progress we've made at 311 in partnership with our fellow departments. So 311 takes an average of 900,000 requests for service or questions per year through the contact center, on our mobile platforms like our 1ABQ app, or our online submissions. In 2018, the city added the convenience of using Amazon's Alexa smart home device for the option of contacting 311. In January of 2020, the most common calls for information were for buses. We took over 17,000. Missed trash pickup was next, or other solid waste items at 12,218. Animal welfare were 6,402 cases. Municipal development or pothole and street repair, 2,363, and planning or code violations came in at 1,515. And for any call that isn't a request for information, 311 sends the residents' information to the departments by creating and sending a service request. And ideally, the department then fixes the problem and closes the ticket. But based on a high number of unresolved tickets in 2017, Mayor Tim Keller instituted a monthly reporting and review process of all outstanding or unresolved reports immediately after taking office in 2018. The mayor's office then prioritized getting departments to take action on those unresolved cases, or simply to come into alignment by reporting the completed work back to 311 more consistently. The result, in 2 years, unresolved tickets across the city have dropped by almost 90%. Those numbers are led by a 99% drop in animal welfare, part of a major turnaround effort in that department, a 93% drop in transit, and an 85% drop at solid waste. In addition to unresolved calls, 311 also closely tracks the amount of time it takes to answer calls and the quality of the calls we receive. And those factors are driven largely by our staffing levels. This year, the center has met its staffing goals for the first time since tracking began at the start of the Keller administration, and 311 has 5 Spanish speakers to eliminate language barriers to service. Full staffing means calls are now answered more quickly. 90% are answered within 30 seconds of calling, and each agent has the capacity to focus fully on the quality of each call. The city has also examined the possibility of keeping the center open around the clock, so 24/7, but staffing the center 24/7 would add the cost of about $500,000. In the meantime, our residents can report issues by the One ABQ app and our online website services. It is possible to get that report to us 24 hours a day. At its best, 311 makes city government accessible and easy to navigate, improving quality of life for our residents. So when residents contact us, they don't have to navigate the complicated system of who does what at the city and what department takes care of their issue. They just need to let us know what their issue is. We'll get them the correct information and send their request where it needs to go. So I'd like to turn it over to our Director of Technology and Innovation, Brian Osterlove.
Thank you very much. As Carrie noted, one of the areas that we took a very close look at very quickly was call response time. We noticed that the service level, the time, the number of calls that were getting answered within 30 seconds of being placed was low, and it had been consistently low for the last 5 years. So we undertook some special efforts to examine what the issues were. It's closely related to staffing. We looked at our staffing levels. We found that we had a number of vacancies, and we found that we were taking on average about 180 days to fill a vacancy. We then took a number of weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, before an agent hit the floor to take any phone calls. We undertook improvement efforts on both of these fronts. We have now reduced our time of vacancy from 180 days to about 85 days. We have also reduced the time before the agent hits the floor from 6 to 8 weeks to roughly 4 weeks. The end result is that we have essentially found 3 FTE, 3 staff worth of productivity each year without increasing the budget. As Carrie pointed out earlier, we are now fully staffed. We have added about 10 new staff members over the last year or so. So let's move. Once you've made the call, what happens? When is a 311 case resolved? There are 2 primary destinations for calls. One is other agencies, non-city agencies. In non-city agency situations, there are times when it is completely appropriate that we simply hand off the call to another agency. For example, when there's an obstruction on the freeway, that is not handled by the City of Albuquerque, that is handled by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. So we transfer that over to the New Mexico Department of Transportation and close the case immediately. There are other times when citizens, community members should have and do have a reasonable expectation that the city will follow through on the request. A perfect example is, as Sarita noted, streetlight outages. Most people don't know there are 32,000 streetlights in the city of Albuquerque. 10,000 of those are owned and maintained by Public Service Company of New Mexico, P&M. The other 22,000 are owned by the city and maintained under contract by a company called Citalume. Previously, when 311 received a call about streetlights, they referred it to that other agency, to Citalume or to P&M, and closed the ticket. Now 311 initiates a service request identifying who owns the ticket, sends it to the Department of Municipal Development, and Municipal Development then works with both Citalume and with P&M. In the case of Citalume, we close the ticket immediately, but we are working with Citalume to get a report back more frequently than monthly. We get a monthly report now. We're working to get a report so that immediately when we find out they fixed a streetlight, we will close the case then. With P&M, there is no current system in place for P&M to report back to the city when a light is fixed, but the city is working on a memorandum of understanding, an agreement, that would require that lights reported to P&M be fixed within a certain time, and that P&M would notify us of that correction, of that resolution. So for certain cases, as I noted, we hand off to other agencies. Most of the service requests we receive are in fact for city, so we hand them off in many cases to other systems. We heard from a lot of people that call would show as closed in the 311 system before the problem was actually fixed. That arose because the city over time implemented various systems in the departments to manage their work orders. There's a program, for example, called Chameleon in Animal Welfare, Posse for the Planning Department, and Yardie for Parks and Recreation. Each of those departments manages their own work orders in each of those systems. 311 was closing the tickets when the issue was referred to the other system. In order to fix this, we are connecting and sometimes creating interfaces between each of these systems and our 311 system. As an example, just 10 days ago, we completed an interface with the Posse system so that those cases reported to the planning department are no longer closed immediately when the case goes to the Posse system. They are open in CRM. They are then opened in the Posse system, and when the planning staffer closes the case in Posse, the report comes back to CRM, and only then is the case closed in CRM. Additionally, we're using data to drive change. While we would love to be able to respond to every resident's issue immediately, the truth is we have to balance those requests with everything else our city is doing. We realize we can do this by using 311 data to tell us that a problem is on the rise. For example, we can then use that data to change how we allocate resources, and when those resources are limited, we can be clear about what our residents can expect when they report an issue. Missed trash pickups is just one example of this situation. Solid waste is among the top call drivers with about 12,000 calls in January. Over 2,000 of those calls, 2,125, were for missed trash pickups. Based on data from 311, Solid Waste hired an additional staffer dedicated to managing missed trash pickups and improving outcomes for solid waste customers. In addition, 311 changed their script for missed trash pickup calls, and now ensure callers have an accurate expectation for when their missed trash pickup will be collected. Another great example is with reports on homeless encampments. Formerly, reports for homelessness were universally routed to 242 cops. Working closely with departments, 311 found it was more efficient to triage these calls based on location. Now encampments on city property are routed to Family and Community Services Outreach Coordinator. Debris under highways were once routed to the New Mexico Department of Transportation, but are now referred to solid waste. Furthermore, with this change, we were able to see the city needed more resources for encampment cleanup. Family and Community Services hired a full-time outreach manager for homeless encampments, which also helped ensure that people who are camping illegally are better connected to services and shelter. Another frequent report we receive is for cracked roadways. The city receives calls every day about cracked streets, but does not have crew capacity to respond to each call in the moment. Instead, we take a data-driven approach. Department of Municipal Development uses 311 data to help set priorities for its annual streets maintenance plan. Furthermore, we change the script so the caller knows their call is being addressed through that process. In analyzing unclosed tickets, the new administration found that multiple departments were responsible for picking up sharps. By making Parks and Recreation Department the lead agency for sharps when reported anywhere in the city, the administration increased efficiency and accountability in an important public safety area. Sharps calls also took a lot of time to respond because if they were reported in a location like a park, parks are large, parks have a lot of spaces where a sharp can hide. It would take a worker quite a bit of time to find and remove it. Now reports of sharps can be made through the One Albuquerque app, where you may also submit a photo of the location, and that helps us to respond to those reports more quickly. Another consistent issue is duplicate and ghost tickets, which refer to multiple calls on one issue or calls on an issue that is resolved by the time a department goes out to check on it. This was especially a problem with abandoned vehicles. Mayor Keller inherited a list of unresolved abandoned vehicle reports that numbered in the thousands, many of them several years old. Abandoned vehicle calls must be verified in person. Many of those cases turn out to be duplicate reports or ghosts. It quickly became evident that personally checking each of these old calls was not the best use of taxpayer time and money. We made the decision to close old outstanding tickets, and were then able to prioritize handling and closing the remaining tickets more efficiently. Since we closed the old cases, we have received over 3,000 new cases. As of February 5th, 2020, only 467 of those cases remained. a multi-department task force, including DMD security, parking enforcement, APD, and 311 is tackling the remaining backlog and managing new reports as they come in. As testament to that, on February 5th, as I noted, there were 467. Checked earlier this morning, there were only 430 remaining open. So new cases are being closed, old cases are being handled. Using a new report generated by 311 of likely duplicate tickets, they compare cases against one another, eliminate clear duplicates, and create an accurate view of the scope of the actual number of abandoned vehicles. Of the 275 referrals for abandoned vehicles in January, 116 vehicles were tagged and 14 were towed. Vehicles on public property are referred to the abandoned vehicle unit in APD. Vehicles on private property are now referred to code enforcement as zoning issues. Finally, I'd like to highlight something that caused confusion last summer. In 2019, a miscommunication between Albuquerque Fire and Rescue and 311 led to both department contact centers being closed on the 4th of July. And while the 311 website and One Albuquerque app were still available, frustrated residents could not call in a report of illegal fireworks. That's changing this year. 311 will remain open and serve as the official point of contact for these non-emergency reports. I want to stress, in the event of a fire or other emergency, residents should, as always, call 911. And as in many areas, the One Albuquerque app is a much more efficient way to make those reports when folks have and prefer that technology. While we are excited about the progress we've been able to make in the last 2 years, we have also identified other areas where we know we can improve, and that's our focus moving forward. As more trends demonstrating the needs of the community are revealed, and the city continues to collaborate interdepartmentally, and I want to thank several department directors who are here representing that collaboration, and with community partners, 311 will continue to update and improve their practices in supporting all departments and divisions. Thank you all very much.